Hey, this is Kyle here. Today I'll be reviewing This Way to the End Times, Classic Tales of the Apocalypse, edited by Robert Silverberg. This is a collection of short stories that are kind of set in dystopian situations, as the subtitle says, kind of like apocalyptic type situations. I would say if you tend to like dystopian style books, movies, TV shows, I think this is a collection of short stories that you'll really enjoy. The one thing I really liked about it is the time period of the stories are pulled from. Some are very recent, but you have some that go back 100 years, something. I believe there's even a couple stories from the 1800s. And it's very interesting to kind of see how authors have viewed kind of the end of the world scenarios or dystopian type situations as history has evolved. It's kind of very cool because one thing that the editor he gives kind of a little introduction to each story, and they'll kind of tell like why this story was selected, why it's important, what makes it interesting, what's interesting about the author, and stuff like that. And a few points even highlights that this story at the time, the end of the world scenario that the author was proposing was viewed as very scientifically possible, and something that readers at the time would have found absolutely terrifying and actually realistic, because it was kind of reflecting the scientific thought of that time period. Some cases that's still proven to be true. Other ones is like this scientific theory that was being proposed 100 years ago, 150 years ago, we now know is completely rubbish. There's no way this could ever happen. But it still makes for a very interesting story. So you kind of want to get a little peek into the scientific thought of the day and stuff like that. And also how society was viewed, and how that's changed over the periods in the past 100, 200 years and stuff like that. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. Also, one thing I really appreciated the job that the editor did in picking these stories is all these apocalyptic tales definitely fall into different genres. There are some that are put forward as very scientifically based. Even if it's the science of how they viewed it when it was being written, it was still kind of written from that prism. There's others that have actually much more of a fantasy tilt to it, and in no way was the author trying to portray this as like, oh, this is actually a realistic scenario. It's more like, no, this is just a cool story idea I had, and there's going to be magic and fantastical creatures and stuff like that in here. Don't think I'm trying to predict this is actually how the world's going to end. Where clearly some other authors were writing these stories. It's like, I'm trying to warn society, if we keep on going down this current path, this is how the world could end. Or some are just portraying like, regardless of what we do, this is something that scientifically could happen that could end the world like a snap of a finger. So it's very, very interesting. Not only are there different genres explored, very different writing styles. That's one thing, and I don't really read collections of short stories that often, maybe one every year or two. But every time I do, I was like, I wish I should do this more often, because it's a great way to kind of get exposed to a lot of cool authors, a lot of cool writing styles from a lot of different periods. A lot of times authors you've never heard of before. There's several authors in this this collection that the editor points out was really well-known, respected authors during their time period, but for some reasons just haven't maintained their popularity into the current age. That's one thing that's always hard to predict, what author that's popular now, but like 50 years in the future is just going to be completely forgotten, and somebody else that was, that same time period, 50 years from now, will still be super famous. It's always hard to predict which author will kind of stay in power and which one won't. So this collection definitely exposed me to a lot of really cool authors that I'd never heard of before. There's even a few in here that they mentioned, like this person wrote one short story, it was published in this one magazine, and it is amazing, and we still want to highlight it. So I think a couple things I wanted to, points I wanted to make with this video is, one, if you typically don't read collections of short stories, you should. Not saying you have to be this one if you're not into dystopian or apocalyptic tales. This is probably not a collection of short stories for you. But figure out what's your genre that you love. Are you really into fantasy? Are you really into mystery novels? Whatever it be, and then go find a collection of short stories in that genre, and you'll have an amazing time. It'll expose you to a lot of cool authors you've never heard of before, a lot of writing styles that maybe you typically wouldn't delve into that you'll want to explore more in the future. It's a great way to kind of broaden your horizons, and I think even fall more in love with a genre that you already love. I would definitely, if you like dystopian or apocalyptic styles like I do, I would definitely recommend this one. I really enjoyed it a lot. There was a couple stories I didn't get that much into, but anytime you have a collection of short stories, there's always going to be a few that don't speak to you, but there's a few that you read and you're like, oh, this is amazing, I'm going to reread this story immediately. Of course, the other thing I really love about a collection of short stories, they make for quick reads, because, instead of looking like, oh, this is a 400 or 500 page book I have to read, it's more like, no, these are 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 page stories that, I can knock out a story a day easy, even if I'm busy, and I still feel like I'm making a lot of progress in my reading. Because a lot of times I have that hold people back when they're really busy. They're like, well, this is a big book. What does it really matter if I'm only able to read 5 or 10 pages a day? It's going to take me like months to get through it. When you're reading a collection of short stories, you can just have time to read 10 or 15 pages, and that's like an entire story. You feel like, oh, I knocked the story out today. That's really cool. I'll read another story tomorrow. So anyways, I guess this is my plug. Read collections of short stories. They're really awesome. And specifically, like I said, I really enjoyed this one, This Way to the End Times, edited by Robert Silverberg. If there's a collection of short stories that you've read and you really enjoyed, let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and happy reading.